Welcome, everybody, to Gen Y Jazz. This is my personal project during lockdowns to explore the creative minds of really the great players of our time. And I am dressed up today because today's guest told me once that you do that for musical royalty. And Rodney Jones is nothing less than musical royalty. He has recorded more albums than I have hairs on my head. He has played with literally everybody. His students are a list of who's who in the jazz industry and really the music industry. He has scored for film. He has taught at all the top institutions. Am I missing anything, Rodney?
No. I mean, modesty precludes me from saying more.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to the rest if I have, but I guess as a way of introduction, I might ask you, is there anything in the music industry you have not done yet that you would like to do?
Since you put the "would you like to do" part, no.
Okay, fair enough. Should we get into the stuff you haven't done that perhaps you don't care for?
Well, no, it's not that I don't care for it. It's just that I don't care about it. Not caring about something is different than not caring for something. So there are lots of things that I don't really. I'm neutral about. It's like it doesn't matter to me, but I'm not against it. I'm not for it. It is what it is. I guess something like that would be. Uh, I don't really know. I guess not. I guess I've done everything. I've played pretty much with everybody and written music for everybody and recorded with everybody and done all the TV and the shows and
Yep.
concerts and performances. So I've been very fortunate in my career and life to be able to share music with so many great musicians and so many willing ears in the audience. So I'm grateful for what I have.
That's excellent. And, you know, I'm honored that you could be here precisely because, those accomplishments are what they are. I mean, your resume reads like a jazz textbook. And I think we'll get into that, but it's worth saying, as I've said on this show before, that you were my teacher and I consider you a mentor. And actually, my experience with you was probably the closest I've been so far to like the apprenticeship model of which you partook. So maybe to get started, could you offer some thoughts on mentorship, apprenticeship versus just private lessons? Like when we were in private lessons, you used to ask me all the time, not what have you been working on, but what have you been doing? Have you
Right.
played any gigs? Have you been going to sessions? Have you, so I'm just curious if those concepts influence your teaching.
Well, I mean, I've always identified as a teacher who could play, not a player who could teach, and that's an important differentiate. It's an important point that's different than saying that I play and I also teach. When one's motive is to serve, um, it's different than one's motive is to gain or even to share. Um, I think a teacher is someone who can impart a wealth of knowledge that they've accumulated. But I think a master teacher awakens the knowledge that's within the student already existing. They can awaken that student to their purpose, their vision, what it is they need to do and they should do in the time and space that they live, in the worlds that they circle in, the people they play with, the audiences that hear them. What is it that they can bring to that environment from their own experience, their own life story? It will have a meaning and a value. What is worth asking people to exchange time with their life for what you're sharing? And so that's the starting point for me. That I'm a teacher first and a player second. I play well. Don't get me wrong. I can play the guitar, but when I have to choose, and if I ever have to choose, I always choose to help someone else rather than spend time in the shed for myself.
Has it
That
always been that way for you?
It's always been that way. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And you said a key thing. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had James Zito on the show, and one thing he said about you that obviously I agree with was how you, and you touched on this, how you bring about what's already in the student. And I think it's fair to say you expand it. Certainly in my case, you didn't just build on what I knew, but you added to what I knew, you know. And I wonder if that approach involves conveying information or just imparting a desire for the search.
The deepest things that are ever imparted from mentor or apprentice to, teacher to apprentice, that sort of thing, are things that are caught and not taught. The deepest things is something that you catch that becomes a part of you, a part of your being that is not necessarily limited to words or notes or even in a particular technique on the instrument. It's something else. For me, it always starts with genuinely caring about the person first, and I do deeply care about the people that entrust me with their musical future, because it's no small thing to give someone some gifts that really make a difference, and it's also no small thing to steer them a wrong way that causes them years of like having to figure some stuff out only to discover, wow, that was really a wrong thing for me. So I take it serious. I treat every student like they're my kid. What I would do for my daughter, I would do for you, and that's the starting point. Now, what determines the course of that is that not all students can accept that. Number one, we are in a culture and a world where who believes that someone is actually like that with you? I mean, very few people. Very few people really show up to give everything to you and for you. There's always the me element. I like the big I. I always have tried to bring the small I. Like, I want to impart the things of my journey that help you the most, not that make me look any kind of way or that show what I can do. So I think it begins for me with really caring. In your case, for example, you were someone who was just drenched in talent and potential, and it was, I like the way I always looked at, like, you were never broken musically. You were just unfinished. There was nothing about you that was wrong. It was just not finished. There was so much to polish and to bring out and to highlight and to shine a spotlight on, and there was just a lot of that kind of stuff. And telling you that is one thing, but getting you and encouraging you and showing you to believe it about yourself is really the beginning of making the kind of progress that you've made. Because if you don't believe it, your playing is not going to be what you can play. It's going to be what you can accept that you can play. That's what you're really going to play. What you believe in your heart and accept that you can do is what you're going to be able to do. Even if I tell you can do it, if you don't accept it, you're not going to do it, and you're not going to achieve it. So, someone like yourself or James Zito are what every teacher wants to have, because someone who takes the lessons and the gifts and the things that are offered, applies them, does the work, and then asks themselves, how can I make this my own, and how can I pay it forward? The greatest thing any student ever does for me is to become a mentor for someone else. That's the thing, because if you know the value, it shows me that you recognize the value of what that relationship is. When you become that for someone else, you're saying, I get it. And you've done that as well. So that's why I'm here. You're here, and I'm musical royalty, but I honor your journey and all the steps that have led you to this. I remember when that was not an assured path. I remember when there were lots of ways to go with that, and I did all I could and still do to be supportive when needed, to be a truth teller when needed, to be stern when needed it, to be loving when needed. I never had a cookie cutter, I'm showing up for the lesson and here's what I'm going to present. It's always who comes in the room that day depends on who I am showing up for that person that day. And so here I am today, showing up as this guy today.
That's great. And you touched on a lot of things that are definitely, important and things that I can vouch for. For example, you said that, a lot of students will enter the lessons with some doubt as to whether or not the teacher cares. And this is one thing Zito and I talked about, is Rodney actually cares, not only about his students, but about each student, singular. And I remember going in, I think a lot of students like myself were just disillusioned with the education system, the jazz education system. And part of that was teachers who, like you say, have their curriculum that they want to impart, and they don't care if you're gigging or not. But then, when I was with you, we finally had a couple moments. I remember one in particular where you had showed me something in a past lesson, and I came in the next lesson and said, yeah, I played a gig with this certain kind of drummer, and this stuff worked. And you were like, see? Yeah. It was a full circle moment where it kind of clicked for me. And another moment, which I've told on this story, was with James. Just hearing his level of projection unplugged. And I remember you were telling me, man, you're playing a Gibson. Make it sound like a Gibson. We need more sound. And just these little lessons, life is what brought it out. So I appreciate those things you've said. And, I guess I would ask, as far as your own teachers, who were some of the ones that imparted that approach to you? I know some of it is your own concept, but a lot of it must have come from Bruce Johnson and Dizzy Gillespie.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Johnson is the primary source of the journey of me really getting it together on the guitar. He was a genius, a true musical genius, and a guitar genius. Not that he played everything on the guitar, but everything he played was genius. And the first gift that he gave me was, you can do it. Like, no excuses, because you can do it. I see that you can do it, so either you believe me or you believe your lying eyes. Who do you believe? Yourself? You don't know anything, so why you believe in you? You know I can play, and I'm saying you can do it, so you got to believe me. So if I tell you can do it, the only thing standing between you and you playing how you want to play is doing some work, making some effort about it. And that was a big gift, to have someone that I loved and respect so much see potential in me and say, you can do it. I felt like I was Superman. Like, Superman had just said you can fly. I was like, okay, then I'll fly. It was literally that. So that was the first thing. He also had a way of always focusing on the creative aspect. He rarely focused on the mechanics of things, on deep theoretical lessons. And we didn't really do that much. But he focused on how to go deep in a creative way. His rule of theory, which is the rule of theory I use, is if the second chord sounds good after the first chord, it's correct. If the line you played, you believe it, it's the right line. If the line you play after the first thing sounds good to you, it's the right thing. Then the question is, well, how do you grow your ears to hear more, so that what sounds good to you a year from now is much more expansive and bigger than what sounded good to you last year. And he had a real commitment to excellence. He didn't want me to goof around on the guitar and play around. He took his life on the instrument serious. He took it as something that was his life's calling to do. And if I was there spending time of his life for him to show me, he expected me to be a worthy steward of what he was giving. And I accepted that challenge. I said, I knew in my heart I would do that. So that's the first thing, just a gift of a mentor. My biggest teacher before him was my dad. My dad was a Christian minister for 60 years, and it's not about his religious beliefs, but it's about that I saw him dedicated and devoted and focused to an ideal his entire life. And I saw the value of what rinse and repeat in dedication and focus makes, and what it means to really live a life serving, not selling. To live a life giving. I understood early that the secret of getting is giving. The story that is one of the defining moments of my musical life and my whole life is when I was about 6 years old, and my father was preaching at a church, and where he was a preacher every week in Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. And week after week he would do these sermons that were about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then he would stand on the steps of the church after the sermon for like 2 hours with every little old, there would be like a line of 100 church ladies, waiting, little black church ladies waiting to give him a hug, and he would talk to everyone and hold their faces and how they doing and ask about their grandchildren. Everyone. Well, as a little kid of 6, wanting to get home to my mom's cooking, this drove me crazy. And I'd be tugging on his robe, and Dad, can we go? And blah blah blah. And he would always stay to the end. And one day I'm tugging on his robe, and he got down on one knee. He said, "Son, for some of these people, it's the only time in a week when anyone ever looks them in the eye and lets them know they're loved." He said, "For some of these people, it's the only time someone ever touches them or asks how they're feeling. It's the only time someone shows them that they matter." He said, "What you don't know, son, is they don't come for the sermons, they come for the hugs." That was a defining moment in my life, because it told me everything about music. It told me everything about my interaction with people, that I could play great and all that, but to help one person, to see one person with tears in their eyes because a weight is lifted, or because something in the music meant a difference to them, or they see that to teach a student that believes they can't do it and see that shift that they can. The gold was in that. The gold was in not accolades and people applauding for me and saying you're great, and that it just changed what mattered to me the most. And so in life and in music, it's not what you know that determines your course, it's what you value. And so I came to value this idea that helping another person is the way forward. The way for me to grow is by helping someone else grow. That I could shine a light for them, and that same flashlight would also illuminate my own path. As I shine it for them, I'm also seeing my way. And so that just determined everything. That was not about believing a particular religion. It was a bigger picture than that. It was about what love as a verb looks like. And it doesn't matter if it's music or going to the grocery store or talking to your family members or a stranger or doing a podcast, that was the motivating thing. That was my why. That was my purpose and intention. And I've never forgotten that. So that my dad is, if I'm going to talk about music, I've got to include him. Other figures musically, obviously Nathan Page was a huge influence. His intervallic playing, his use of fourths and fifths. Bruce also played fourths and fifths. When I heard Nathan Page do it, I heard My Heart Song. I heard him play it, and I was like, that's what it was like. When he did it, it's like the 4-minute mile. Someone broke the 4-minute mile. The year later, 28 people did it. It'd never been done before. I think Roger Bannister broke it, and then that next year, 28 people broke it. When I heard Nathan Page do it, I was like, I knew it was possible. I knew that sound existed, and I knew that it was just a matter of me getting to that sound. So Nathan Page was a huge influence. I have to say, of course, Wes Montgomery. What are you going to say? That this is the ultimate of ultimate jazz guitar players in a traditional sense. George Benson for his sheer guitar mastery and blues inflected and unique style that he, the combination of technical genius and linear genius was just, to grow up in that time. Because I was telling someone yesterday, like I grew up in a time when the records that now are nostalgic were new.
Right.
When these came out, so the guys I grew up, the way that young people are growing up with like Peter Bernstein and Lage Lund and Gilad, well, George Benson and, Grant Green was still playing around. Wes had died, but Grant Green was still playing, and George Benson was looming large, and so I grew up with like those as contemporary. I'm trying to grow up and find my own way in the shadow of these great giants playing, and so he was definitely one. I would say he didn't teach me anything, but he taught me a lot through listening to him, as did Wes Montgomery and many other players. Certainly other musicians, but in terms of guitar, Bruce Johnson and Nathan Page are the two. Bruce Johnson is the actual only teacher I had of that level that actually spent a couple years, and we became friends like you and I are friends. We stayed friends his whole life. So he would be the big influence.
And of course, he's on your record, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Articulation was your debut record.
Yes? No, you're wrong.
Okay.
Articulation was my second recording. Bruce Johnson and I did a record before, I believe a couple of tracks are on YouTube, called The Liberation of the Contemporary Jazz Guitar. The title tells you everything you need to know. That was his title, The Liberation of the Contemporary Jazz Guitar. Because he felt like jazz guitar was very conventional, and people played within the same familiar parameters. And it didn't mean it wasn't great. It didn't mean it wasn't swinging and beautiful music. It was just very conventional, and I think that's true today by and large. That there are many fine players. I mean, we're in an era where the level of guitar playing in general, jazz guitar in general, I don't think has ever been higher as a collective group in terms of people that can play the instrument well, but people that are truly pushing the idiom forward in any kind of way, or playing things that haven't been really done on the guitar a lot. There's a few. There have been some definitive people. I think Pat Metheny established a type of sound that hadn't been widely done before. I think Kurt Rosenwinkel expanded on that in his own way, and others. I think I've made a contribution in terms of some of the more intervallic Coltrane McCoyish type of vocabulary on the instrument. I've had a role to play in that.
You certainly have.
And then there's many other great proponents. We're in a time where Peter Bernstein is playing, Bobby Broom is playing. These are masters of the instrument. They're undeniable, brilliant musicians. Is it pushing it forward? I don't know. I think it's refining it inward, and that's good. It's beautiful. I love it. I mean, it's masterful. I've always felt that there's a nudge to what else is possible nudge. So,
you're touching on several things that we used to talk about in lessons, and I want to shine a light on a couple of them. The first is love, and you made the point that your father, in a big way, in probably a unparalleled way, imparted that to you, and I can vouch for that in your pedagogical approach. There was no question that you loved what you were doing and who you were doing it for, and that was established in my mind by the time you told me in a lesson you graduated today. And it was like 3 months before I got my degree or something. Today you graduated. And it meant something, not only coming from you, but precisely because you had imparted that love in a really sincere way. And so I don't know, I'm focusing on it because I wish more teachers embodied that,
Well, I remember that day, and that was the day when, I mean, I had encouraged you and implored you for a long time to show up, play for real, step into your own shoes, plant your feet and play the guitar, believe in what you're playing, don't settle, all this sort of thing. And I saw incremental progress. But that day, I got it. That day was like, I felt fulfilled. That was the day when I was like, wow, it meant something. What I've been sharing meant something, because you demonstrated back to me all the values and the things that I hold most dear. You demonstrated that you had taken that to heart, done that stuff, and it had paid off. It actually worked. It's like, it's like I created Frankenstein's monster, and the monster stood up and said, "Hey, Dr. Frankenstein." I was like, man, it worked, But I also wanted to let you know, because having been the recipient of someone believing in me and someone acknowledging me, I know what it means. I don't ever offer that pro forma. I don't offer that unless it's true. I'm not going to say you graduated to make you feel good. I won't do it. That's doing you a disservice. But on the other hand, I will never withhold that if it's true. I don't have any interest in keeping you in a certain place just because I can. And that day, you did graduate, Mr. Sean. It didn't matter what your diploma said. It didn't matter what was coming. That was the day to me that you graduated.
Well, and you're right. It did mean the world. And once again, I can vouch for that. I mean, I can remember times when you were very harsh with me. I remember one lesson in particular, if you don't mind me sharing.
Oh, I don't mind.
I think we were playing Days of Wine and Roses. And we played a measure and a half of music. And you stopped and you said, "Please play an interesting chord." and I was shocked by that comment, because I was a grad student. I had so many teachers, 6 years of college. It's like, when has a teacher ever said something like that to their student? But we were in the habit of recording the lessons. I listened back, and you were correct. You were absolutely correct. And it was one of those click moments where I went, oh yeah, okay,
Why play F major seventh if you could play A over F?
yeah,
Why?
right, exactly.
Why do you have to play F major seventh? You play anything. My kingdom for a different chord. Anything.
Right. And so you're right. You wouldn't just throw those compliments around. You take this thing seriously, and it sounds like you take it as seriously as Bruce Johnson or someone who, or your father, someone who was really committed, and that does mean the world. So thank you for that.
You're
The other
welcome.
thing I'm hearing though from you is this sense of pushing forward, doing the work. You've mentioned the 4 minute mile. I think when we were in lessons, you talked about people climbing Everest.
Yep.
You're very concerned about people putting in superhuman work or superhuman amounts of work. And that's another thing that it seems obvious on the face of it, but until you have someone really pushing you to do that, it's easy to neglect.
Yeah.
And I think that's just another thing I thank you for because it really made all the difference in a short time, you know.
Well, thank you. And you're in a unique position with me because you got to see the before and after. Me like being me, and then me after getting the complete wind and everything knocked out of me for a year. With my hand injury and with my granddaughter's death, that was a time of recalibration, and I either had to refocus and rededicate or give up. That was a moment where I had a choice. I could say, if because the doctor told me after my hand injury, he said, look, you'll be good opening jars and doorknobs. Beyond that, that's going to be on you. And I realized that it was going to be, to come back and play the way I wanted to play with the degree of excellence and to really give my heart a voice. It was going to take superhuman effort. It was going to take working through an injury that essentially meant I could barely play one note on the guitar. That's why I took that year from school because I couldn't play. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't teach. I couldn't play anything. So, and then the emotional hit, really caused me to then really like decide like what really mattered. Like, why was I even doing this? Like the wind was taken out of my sails completely. So you got to see the before sort of Rodney, like, that guy, and then you got to see the Rodney recovery guy, and you got to see me as I'm recovering, because I think during our lessons I got better just in terms of what I could do and how I could play. I mean, it was never horrible, but I think just mechanically and energetically, it just became more and more clear that I was making some progress. At least it felt that way to me. And the recordings that I have from playing on Facebook ad nauseum have confirmed that. So you got the benefit of both those things. I don't really see the superhuman effort. I just think that you have a chance to do this, and you might as well go for what you really want to be and who you really want to be, because this is your shot to do it. The saddest thing is coulda, woulda, shoulda, and we all expect to have however long we expect to have, but none of us are sure. And so every day counts. Every day matters. And the other part of that is, to be an example for your friends and your family and other people of what's possible if someone really gives some effort with a clear intention. If you're doing it for the right reason, if you're doing it for love, or you're doing it for God, or you're doing it for your family, or whatever you're doing it for, but to connect to your why at a deep level and let that be the motivating factor, I think that's the thing that allowed me to overcome the obstacles. To go, I could find myself on Everest, but to go the distance, I had to know why I was there. Why am I enduring this? For what purpose? And if that purpose was only me, so I could play me and I could do me, that was not enough. That wasn't going to take me up the mountain. I had to say, no. I'm doing this for my granddaughter. I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this for my students. I'm doing this to show everyone what's possible if you really, really work and care enough about yourself. And so that was the effort that I made, and I did that consciously, thinking that I would model that for those that I would teach and those that would know me, all my peers and everybody, because everybody knew what happened. So the only thing was how the story ends, you know. And then he gave up, or then he sucked, or he played okay, or like what happened after that. And I was determined that, you know, I would show that with love and patience for myself and work and keeping an ideal and an intention and doing the work, getting up at 5 in the morning and working from, you know, from 5 to 7 uninterrupted for a year, that I could do it. And in fact, that's what happened.
No doubt. And once again, I appreciate that answer. I particularly appreciate that you were candid about what was going on at that time. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring that up, but since you mention it, I'll just tell you, you know, for those watching, it was in 2018, right?
27 December of 2017.
Was the hand injury.
And my granddaughter died too. The same within 2
It
weeks
was
of the hand injury, my granddaughter died. At
so
4.
it was at the end of my first semester at MSM, and you're right, you took the rest of the year off, the following semester, and I remember, you know, right after it happened, and this speaks to what you're talking about. You came in anyway. You tried, and at one point in the lesson, you just said, "I'm sorry, my hand's killing me, and let's just talk life." And we talked life. And I can't remember. Again, that's that mentorship thing. I don't remember ever doing that with a teacher, you know, and that was really powerful. And then you're right, when you came back and you were putting in the work, and you had your why. As a man, just the level of respect I had for you. I mean, that was another thing, and this kind of touches on another um, area that I wanted to talk to you about, which is I can count on my hand the great teachers. Like, I've had a lot of good teachers, but the great, you know, exemplary jazz educators, I can count on one hand. And what's unique, there are several things that are unique about each of them. You're the only guitar player. I've had good guitar teachers, but you're nothing like you know. Um, but what unites them all is a leading by example. You mentioned your Facebook uh, work. You know, for those who don't know, Rodney live streams on Facebook, and he'll play a song for 45 minutes, and he'll just play the hell out of that song. You know, um, and that's been really informative and useful for me. But it's just that leading by example. It's not even a lesson. It's just a demonstration, and that speaks volumes. And of course, that's been your COVID project. This is my COVID project, but you were doing it before then too. Could you talk about that form of leadership, that form of mentorship, of just doing the work and letting that speak for itself?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, the purpose of the music is to serve the people that hear it, and that's, you know, on multi levels. If it's guitarists and musicians, you know, some want to learn how's he doing. Some it's very a mental sort of, wow, how's he fingering that, or what's the device he's using, and this or that. For people, sometimes it's the wow factor. Wow, you know, that's great, and then there's sometimes I play other, you know, I play music that they can say, wow, that's really beautiful. I really love that. But I have really just sought to do in public what I do in private, which is to embrace the aesthetic of beauty and also to embrace the aesthetic of exploration. I like to hear Bill Evans on Blue and Green, and I also like to hear Coltrane on Impressions. They're not one or the other. I like them both for different reasons. I like Miles playing on Blue and Green, and I like Coltrane playing on, you know, Blue and Green. You know,
Yeah.
or so what? Like I like. There's no conflict with the poet and the explorer. You know, I've always wanted to. You know, I've always said this about myself. Like, you know, I think I want to be known as a person who has the soul of a poet and the heart of an explorer. That's
I
how I
like
would want to see myself. You know, if there were going to be an obituary, if they said, you know, he had the soul of a poet, he loved people, he loved love, he loved, you know, he loved the things of the heart, but he always kept his heart open to what's possible, to the adventure of it, you know, to the childlike curiosity of it. I mean, when I pick up my guitar to play, I don't ever know what's going to happen, and that's a really exciting it makes it fun after all these years to pick it up and like I don't actually know, including I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I don't know what it is I'm not going to be able to do or what it is I'm going to be able to do. I know I know I have a lot of vocabulary and devices and things I can use, but I never know how I'm going to put them together. I never know I don't know what tune I'm going to play. I don't. So all I've done is like when I come into this studio space here, this practice space, I just turn on the camera. I don't mind people seeing what I'm actually doing, because how refreshing is it to see someone actually be an authentic, real human being, not layered up, not being the great Rodney Jones, not being the great educator, not being this or that, just saying, you know what, I'm here. I'm glad the reason I don't leave my videos up is because it's you come into my house. You came into my house, I played for you, you left. You didn't record every time no one does that. It's not a performance. It's sharing in the moment, the things that are in that moment, and that's why that's why I turn on the camera, because I did it a couple times as an experiment, and the comments I got back were, "Man, this is so valuable. Thank you so." People were so grateful that I would just like show up and play. And the musicians, the guitar players were like geeked out on guitar stuff, and the people were like, the wow factor. And then there are other people that like the kind of things I say about the broadcast, the kind of uplifting topics, and it seemed to fill a need. And I thought, as the pandemic occurred, like people are home and isolated, it's we're physically distant, but we don't have to be socially distant. I never feel socially distant from the people that are hearing the music, just physically distant, but so what, So I treat that as though you're actually in this space with me listening. And sometimes I'm talkative and sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I play for 20 minutes and sometimes I play for 2 hours. It's a genuine, authentic presentation of who I am in that moment, that day. And I'm not trying to be anything other than, and I realized there was a point maybe 3 years ago where I said, you know what, anyone that takes a picture of me is cool. Like people say, is that picture all right? You want to, I was like, no, it's cool, because I decided like whatever is captured is what was actually happening in that moment. Like that's what it was. However I played that day is however I played that day. That, however I looked that day is how I looked that day. And so I was just going to live an authentic life, and people could see that, and they can decide that I want to see it, I don't want to see it, I want to listen, I don't want to listen, and that's all good too, So yeah, that's how I did it. Really, the goal on Facebook was to serve. The goal was to serve, and of course now I've done online courses and teach and stuff online. That's a different thing. But even with that, the goal is not even with that. With that as much, the goal is to serve, not really to sell at all. Selling for me is just letting people know I can help. It's not getting people to buy something they don't need. It's getting to people say, if you're looking for me, I'm looking for you. That's all I'm ever trying to say.
I mean, everything you just said sounds like jazz. The spirit of the moment, of improvising, I don't know. It's a very authentic sensibility, a very authentic worldview that you have. And I don't know. I appreciate it tremendously. Shifting gears here, we've spent a lot of time on the education, but let's talk about your career a little bit, your music. Take us back. You talked about Bruce Johnson. Where did you go to college? And what was your major?
I went to City College in New York, and I went there after having applied to several other schools. I think Manhattan School of Music, and but you didn't have much of a jazz program. But I decided to go to City College because John Lewis from the MJQ was the artistic director of the program.
That's awesome.
And I wanted to learn about composition. And so he wrote all these beautiful arrangements for the Modern Jazz Quartet, and was clearly a player, but his arranging thing was like his orchestration for small. I thought that was really extraordinary, and Bruce thought that was a good idea too. He was like, man, the lines are whatever they are, but the chords is just the magic,
That's
and I got that early on, and so I was like, okay, well that's what I want to do. So I went there, and I studied with him. And I learned a lot. Then I ended up playing. He asked me to play in his ensemble. Then he asked me to play in his group, as like play in his group, So that was a whole other thing. And during that time, I had lots of like amazing. I was just thinking like the people I played. Like I played with Bobby Tucker. Bobby Tucker was Billie Holiday's piano player. I played with Art Taylor. Art Taylor's on Giant Steps.
Yeah.
I played in Art. He called me to play in his band. I played with Art Blakey. Like I just thought of all these like sort of first person. And I've talked on the phone to McCoy Tyner and Joe Henderson, and I played with Joe Henderson, and so I got started by doing that, and then in school, while I was in school, and I started playing with Chico Hamilton, the drummer, who um, is sort of was a real guitar aficionado, having raised Jim Hall and Larry Coryell and Barry Finnerty and uh, a slew of other guitar players have been through his school of guitar playing, and so I got the gig playing with him with Arthur Blythe, who was a saxophone player, who was really an influential like creative genius to me. Steve Toure, the trombone player, was in the band as well. I was a kid, they were all much significantly older, and but Chico taught me a lot of important things about being an accompanist that no one had ever shared with me, like simple things, but they weren't obvious. Like, if the piano is busy, then you don't be busy. If whatever range the soloist is in, be in another range so that they stand out more. If the piano's playing low, you play high. If the piano's playing high, you play low. If the piano's active, you're not active. Listen to the tonal qualities. Is the tone of your instrument interfering with the tone of other people that are playing? And if it is, how can you adjust your tone so that it fits in this? How do you mix yourself in real time with what's going on in the music? How do you lock to the drums? Just listen to my ride cymbal. Listen to my sock cymbal. Just listen to my bass drum. Listen to that, and it'll tell you what you need to be doing in the band as part of the rhythm section. Or if you're going to step outside the rhythm section, then what are you doing counter to that? What are you doing that's not that? These are things that, as a young musician, it seems so obvious now, but no one had ever taken the time, particularly a band leader, to explain these sort of things to me. When Chico did, he was clear because he wanted his music to sound good, so he didn't mind telling me, like, you know what, I think this might work, or try this. He was the first person that said, why don't you try a phase shifter on your guitar? I wasn't using effects. He's like, no. He's like, no, that's the future. He said, don't rule it out just because it's electric. It's what you do with it that makes it art or not. It's not what it is. It's what you do with it. Put it on. See if you can make music with that.
Wow.
And I took that to heart. I got a phase shift. Well, that was the first pedal I ever got. MXR Phase 90.
Yeah, the
And I
classic.
was like, wow, I still have it, an original MXR Phase 90. And so he really was instrumental in. He was the first person that took me on tour across the United States in a van. So I got lots of life experience, and he's not oft talked about. In his later years, he was teaching at the New School, and of course, he was an NEA jazz master. But he really loved and nurtured me, and we stayed friends his whole life. I saw him maybe 2 weeks before he died. I played on some of his recordings. I did gigs with him over the years. He was just a mentor of the highest order, someone that I really respected and admired because he was someone who cared about me. He showed in his actions that he cared, not just hiring me, but the way and John Lewis the same thing as well. And then all that, of course, Chico's prep led me to be ready to play with Dizzy Gillespie, and that was my big entrance into the jazz scene legit. The reason Dizzy hired me was not because I knew every line and could play everything. It was because the things I could play, I played for real. I played them, when I played blues, I played it like that was all I played. I could swing like I could swing. So I didn't know 1,000 things to play, but the things I knew felt good for someone else to play on top of. If I'm comping for you, it felt good. No one wants to hire someone that they don't like playing with. So when I was playing behind him, he could feel it. It felt good to him, so that's why it worked. The solo was what it was. I mean, I played okay. I think I did pretty good given the time it was. But the reason I can maintain a gig and stay with Dizzy for 3 years was because it felt good to play with. We would call a blues or Night in Tunisia or something like that, and he could enjoy playing while I'm comping behind him. He doesn't want to hate his life for 3 years,
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. And how long were you with Chico, and how
I,
long were you with Dizzy?
I played with Chico uh, about a year consecutive, and then on and off. and I played with Dizzy 3 years consecutively. Um, and then after Dizzy, I then went into the world of sort of the beginnings of smooth jazz. So I played with Angela Bofield and Rodney Franklin and Noel Pointer and John Lee and Jerry Brown, and the precursor to what became smooth jazz. This is before Breezed came out, before George Benson did that thing. Um, because I also liked funk music, so I did that sort of thing and did that, and then that led me to I also got into writing, and I did a lot of TV commercials I wrote for and this kind of thing, and got into kind of the studio because I like technology too, so I learned how to use MIDI. At that time, I don't know why air quotes MIDI, and that led to that, and then led to the next really big. I went to California to play with a vibraphone player named Darwin Gross, who was also the spiritual leader of Eckankar, which is the spiritual path that I follow. And at that time, he was that, and it was amazing to be with someone who was so awakened spiritually, had such beautiful, profound things to say, and he could swing a blues. Like that was like, I literally died and went to heaven without dying and going to heaven. Like someone you can talk about God and then like, okay, let's play, Tenor Madness. So I was like, oh, God, this is it. For me, this is like the perfect formula. And I did that, and that was a huge step in terms of like, having a reason to play beyond just myself. And I got a lot of that from him. And that led really, it didn't lead to it, but it prepared me sort of inwardly to getting the gig with Lena Horne, who taught me more about the subtlety of music than anyone else. She was the one who asked if my chords reflected her first breath before she sung a note. And I was like, whoever even knows what are you talking about? I had no idea. Like, as for all that skill I had no awareness of like that was a thing. And she's like, yeah, no, that's really important. Like, before I sing the first note, I'm breathing in. How am I breathing in? What's the energy? What does it feel like? What does it tell you about how I'm going to sing? What should your first note be based on how I breathed in? I never thought of that. Then she'd be like, the first lyric of the tune, yes. Do your chords match the lyric? Are these chords in the first the first 8 bars, are they preparing for the bridge? I was like, I'm just trying to get to the second 8 bars. She's like, no, but you got to prepare for the bridge in the first notes. You're already there. You're laying the foundation for what it's going to be. Are you aware of that? Do you know the meaning, or do you know all the lyrics? Do you know what the lyrics mean? Have you lived them? Do you have a connection to them? Do you know my connection to them?
Mm.
I mean, this was out of the range of anything any musician had ever talked to me about. A depth of like hearing into the music, and so that was life changing. That's when I learned to listen louder.
And how did you get from not even being aware of those ideas to becoming her music director?
Um, I took what you said to heart. I graduated, like you did. I took it serious, and I knew that I was in the presence of someone who lived what they were saying, and who had lived it for years, for 40 years before I ever met her. And I knew who she was historically, and I knew who she was, her role that she had played in American culture, and particularly African American culture. I understood who she was to me. And so I thought she was worthy of me giving everything to make her sound the best I possibly could. And she was worth it for me to give everything to her, to make her happen. She was worthy of that. And I would learn a lot by giving the most. And so I really tried to do everything she said, and I tried to really learn the lyrics and listen carefully and listen to her breath, and when she had confidence that I was playing at that level, then she began to offer more and more things. I remember I'd been with her, I don't know, maybe 4 months of working through this kind of thing, and we were rehearsing. We were going to London to play a 6-week run at the Adelphi Theatre in London, and we did the first rehearsal. We were scheduled for like 3 rehearsals, 4 rehearsals. And she said, "I need an opening number. Can you write me an opening number?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay. Well, it's going to be a full big band. We'll rehearse it the first. We'll rehearse it the next day on our first rehearsal. We'll rehearse the opening number."
Wow.
Now this meant lyrics,
Right.
the entire tune, writing the entire arrangement, copying the entire arrangement, showing up to the rehearsal in London with the entire arrangement, having never heard it. This is before you do MIDI tracks and you know what it's going to sound like.
Right.
So I said yes, and I went home and I was like, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" But the fact that she asked me, to me, told me she had confidence that I could do it. There was something she was hearing in something that told her I could do it, or that I would find a way to do it. And I did. I put in, 18 hours a day for 3 days. I wrote the lyrics first. It was called Together We Will Fly, because I had to think about who she was, what she was wanting to say to the audience. Where were we? What was the time she was living in? What was the time we were in now? What were people's expectations? What did I feel? I don't even remember all the words. I think I said this. Let's see. This is our time. Let's live it up. Let the music take us there. Enjoy each moment that we have. There's so much for us to share. Each note a melody, each note a key. Us together, you, and she could say you and me. And this night will live forever in our hearts. This night will something will live within our hearts. But whatever it was. But anyway, I wrote these lyrics and I wrote the arrangement, and thank God, literally, I got to hear it at the first rehearsal with a bunch of British musicians. And you know what? It worked, and she loved it. She got a standing ovation opening night, and that was the beginning of her saying, "Would you write this for me?" So I ended up writing 3 or 4 songs for her that she recorded, and arranging a bunch and producing, I think, 3 records for her, and it was the honor of a lifetime. She was deserving of her legendary status. She was truly a great artist and a great human being.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I guess I'll just ask you, was your composition background from City College useful in that, or were you
No,
kind of okay?
no, not in the least. Uh, Stuff I learned from Bruce Johnson was useful. Bruce taught me how to write a big band. He taught me how to voice on the guitar and make it translate that to a big band. So I didn't have to write on the piano. I could hear if I play this voicing and this voicing together, that becomes saxophones and trumpets. He showed me that, like, what that was, so I knew how to, like, figure it out, and I could do it much quicker. I could write on the piano, but it was slow going because I'm not a piano player. But on the guitar, I could work through possibilities much faster, and I could hear in my head, I could hear an F minor 11 on top of a B flat 13th in my head. I could hear it, and I could see what the notes are on the guitar. So I knew what the notes were, and then I could say, well, I could look at ranges and things. But then I had Henry Mancini's arranging book. So if I was not clear about what exactly is the range of this, and the most challenging thing was writing things for alto. Trombones were easy, baritone was easy, trumpets were really easy, tenors were easy, but then you get to that upper major 6 stuff. That was like not so easy. I had to like think about, well, where is this relative to what the tenor is playing, and who should be on top, and what should be, that was a bear. But I just used the Henry Mancini arranging book. I was like, okay, Mancini said this probably is the way to do it, so that's how I did. And it was, of course, Henry Mancini, one of the great genius arrangers of our time. So there you go.
Okay, and so how long were you with Lena Horne?
20 years.
20 years. And along that time, I know you were doing a million other things.
I
At
played
what
with
point?
Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley and Pee Wee Ellis. I was the house guitar player at the Apollo for 9
I was
years.
going to ask about the Apollo, but was that during the same 20-year
Yeah,
window?
yeah. I did a lot of things concurrently, as long as I didn't have too many schedule conflicts. But yeah, I was with Lena Horne, Ruth Brown, Maceo Parker, Showtime at the Apollo. and doing other Jimmy McGriff. I was doing all the Brooke Benton. I was doing all these at the same time.
Um, Hank Crawford as well.
Yeah.
Hank. It's remarkable, and I could ask you a million questions about all of them. I want to get to your music though, your records, um, and you mentioned the word smooth jazz. I was going to ask you about that because I wasn't sure if you were comfortable with that word, and I
It's
was
just a
going to
word.
ask you what's that.
It's just a word.
Well, cheers to that. I mean, the music is phenomenal. It speaks for itself, but I guess what I'm getting at is from a stylistic perspective, and you've already hinted at it, but you're all over the map. It's straight ahead, it's traditional, it's R&B, it's funk, it's
New
whatever
age.
else. Yeah, right, exactly. And new age is a good word. If you had to categorize a record like Lux Eterna, would new age be an apt description to you, or would you use
Well,
some other?
first, kudos that you're even aware of that record. That's kudos number one. Um, yeah, on its surface, that's definitely new age ambient type of music for sure. Most of it. I think there may be one other thing that's not, but I think most of it is ambient new age. It's contemplative music. Some music tells a story, some paints a picture, some takes you on a journey. You know, they music does different things. That music is intended to be a portal into another type of space. I mean, I don't have to get into the. Did I ever tell you about the origin of why it's called Lux Eterna?
No, but
Do you know
is
what?
it related to Ekankar?
No,
Oh, okay.
no. I like the way you say Ekankar. Yes, Ekankar. Yeah. Do you know what Lux Eterna means in
I
in
don't.
in
The eternal
in
light.
Latin? Yeah, eternal light. No, what the origin of that was, and if you listen to that tune, Lux Eterna, you'll hear what it is. Um, I had a real vivid, I'll call it a dream for lack of a better word, but it was. Did I tell you the story?
I've heard you tell it, but
Yeah. So anyway, I had this dream, and in the dream, I'm at the edge of the known universe, the known physical universe, and there was this giant, off in the distance, this giant, massive, yellow white planet, just drenched in light, just pouring off of it, and I hear this sound. It's like it's this otherworldly. There's no no corollary in the physical world of music that I've heard. And I sensed that there was beings. This is in the dream, so I just sensed that there was a consciousness to this planet. That like there was something there, and I said, "Who are you?" And I heard a voice say, "We are the Lux Eterna.
hmm,
We are the beings of eternal light." And then I just drifted into the sound. The moment I woke up, I went to my computer and the synthesizer and opened up Pro Tools and the samples I had, and I tried to listen, see if I could find anything, because I couldn't remember it, but I could remember the echo of it. I could remember how it felt. So using resonance, I went through 100, 200 sounds to see till I found something that said that's familiar. That reminds me of that experience. And then I just began to craft this music, and that became the Lux Eterna, and that became the title of that CD.
that's really cool. And I suspect that the composition process is going to be very different for a record like the X Field.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
can you talk about, I imagine some of the conceptual or thematic ideas are pretty consistent throughout your music. But as far as process, like you just mentioned that you were, sitting at the synthesizer and working on the computer, does that even come into play when you're writing straight ahead
no,
music?
not at all. Not
And
even.
actually, I might ask you, is there a regimented or routine way that you sit down to write music?
No, because most of the best stuff I write comes out as a completed piece. As I write it, I already know. I hear it completed, I guess, manifested. Sometimes I get pieces of it, but most of the time, because I practice it a lot, most of the time I've practiced hearing it. You know, a lot of times the music comes through in a telepathic way. It's condensed, so I have to open up that doorway, and then it comes out like water gushing out, and I just write what comes out. Sometimes it's piecemeal or through resonance. I have a feeling about it, but the X Field was really the precursor to like what I'm doing now in a certain respect. The X Field was like is like going beyond the norm, like the X meaning unknown. Solve for X, whatever that unknown thing is. Go into that area, that field. Go into that area, whatever that is. And so I wrote things that were the things I was practicing and playing that did it for me. You know, this thing. You know, if I go. Like that was everything.
Yeah.
For real. Like legit everything when I play. Like I wrote the things that like this is an advanced concept, one that is not fully embraced by most musicians, but it's this. Write what you want to hear, not what you want to say.
Nice.
So I wrote what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted to hear the guitar say. So I wrote what I said. If I wanted to hear something, what would it be? And it was this. Like that was. Like, once I got that, I was like, okay, I'm done because I heard that, but I didn't hear that as a 2/5, or I heard that relative. I was like, man, that is an end. Most times I heard people play those kind of fourths and fifths against minor chords, but I rarely heard them against. And I was like, man, so I just began to write what I liked. I said, if I want to hear some stuff, I want to hear like play some fourths over a dominant alto. Like, what's that going to be like? What's that going to feel like? So I could literally just begin to write what I felt. And that turned into, you know, it's a snapshot into how I was hearing, what I was thinking about, what I was practicing, and what I loved at that window. That's what I was doing. That's what that is about.
And then I guess another avenue would be Soul Manifesto.
Yeah.
And is the word process even a valid word in this context? I wonder, you know, obviously there's some straight ahead stuff on that record, but there's a lot of like just
groove.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And pocket. And so when, you know, in the tune writing process, is it the
Well, it was a fantasy for me because, you know, I was with Blue Note, so I had a budget. So I'm like, I loved Jimmy McGriff and Hank Crawford and like the blues, you know, Alligator Boogaloo. I loved all that kind of, that sensibility of like, you know, Mercy, Mercy, Mercy and that kind of thing. I loved that. But I loved James Brown and like the authentic thing. And I was thinking like, wow, if I could like combine like the authentic thing, James Brown's thing, with like the jazz thing, if I could somehow like bring those things together, and I was like, what's missing? Well, I love like the exploration. Arthur Blythe. It was like I was a stroke of genius. Like Arthur is the guy. Like that's like bringing Coltrane in to play with like James Brown, you know. And then I said, what if I put Arthur with Maceo Parker, the guy that defined the James Brown sound? And you have the contrast. It's like having in Miles's quintet, like you have Coltrane and Cannonball side by side. You have an exponent of the Bird at the highest level, and then this guy pushing it forward in the same band with Miles. So I was like, man, you know, if I could get Lonnie Smith with like Idris, who defined the funk groove thing,
yeah,
with Maceo, who defined the James Brown thing, that could be something. Because I like all of that. You know, that's going to be a soulful, like, hot mess. You know, and I was like, man, here again, I'm thinking at home, thinking like, man, if I could go hear that band, that would, like, the idea of hearing Lonnie Smith with Maceo, I was like, are you kidding? They never played, none of those people ever played together. I mean, Idris and Lonnie had played together, but I was like, if I could hear like Maceo with Arthur Blythe, are you kidding me? If I could hear Arthur Blythe with Lonnie Smith, if I could hear Maceo with Lonnie Smith, if I could hear Idris and Arthur playing with Idris, like, so it just became this fantasy thing in my mind of like, these are all my favorite players in their idioms, and I have the way to combine them because I played with Maceo, he was my friend. Arthur was my friend. I played with Lonnie Smith, so I knew them all. So I just like hooked it up. The funny thing is when Maceo came into the studio, Arthur Blythe was already there warming up. And Maceo stood in the hallway, listened to Arthur. And Arthur was playing like Albert Eiler, like Coltrane, squeaking, like the most out avant-garde thing, fourth and fifth. It was Berserko. And Maceo looked at me and said, you do know how I play, don't you? Like, it's completely serious. Like, you do know how I like. He was like, have I been set up? Like, what's getting ready to happen? I said, no, Maceo. I said, Maceo, it's all good. I said, don't worry. What you're going to do is perfect. It's not going to be anything weird. It's what you're going to do. It's going to be just perfect. And it was, you know, and it was real, but it was just it was a fantasy project for me. Like, if, you know, it was just a dream project for me. Like, if I could get them in a room, who could I get together that would be who I'd want to play with the most combined, that I'll never have that opportunity to do again. And then I took that group on the road with Fred Wesley taking the place of Maceo. And that was also because Fred is the guy that defined the James Brown sound. So here Fred and Lonnie Smith playing, I mean, you know, for me it was completely like out of body every night. I'm like, this is literally the best thing ever to be playing with these guys who are my heroes that I love in this idiom. To have them together it was amazing.
It's remarkable, and all these records are great. I'll mention just a couple more. You mentioned Blue Note, so The Undiscovered Few, and I think you are the one who showed me that record. But it's a great record, man, and you know, same kind of intensity, same kind of, you know, you even pointed out to me that there's a lot of Wes on that record. There's a lot of channeling. And I guess I want to ask you about channeling, like the whole notion of not necessarily transcription, but just emulation. You know, I emulate you and a few other guys, and of course James does, and everybody has their guys. And is it something that you do deliberately, or should it just be an organic thing that happens in the moment?
That was in that recording. Well, first of all, that recording, The Undiscovered Few, for me was really a compositional thing. It wasn't even about me playing on it. It was about the writing of it. Like, when I think of that recording, the thing I love about it is the writing. The thing I'm not crazy about, I didn't play that well. It's not mixed that well with the guitar. But the writing of it, I think, stands up for what it is. And so that was which was fine, because that's what I was writing what I wanted to. I wrote the tunes how I felt. But on the song that's Wes Montgomery like is Dreamers in Love. You know, where I played like a what's that? Something like that. I don't know, whatever it was, but anyway, that was like, no, I wrote. Whatever. You know, I didn't know I was going to do anything other than I thought it would sound right with the thumb. Mm-hmm. So, but I had no, like, in my mind, I was not thinking like, oh, I'm going to play like Wes or anything. There was none of that. When I started playing, that's what came out. It came out very Wes-like. So much so that going to a gig with Lonnie Smith, I said, Lonnie, who's this? And I played it for him. He's like, oh, that's Wes Montgomery, of course. I said, well, listen again. And he listened to the whole thing. He was like, that was Wes. It's like, no, it wasn't. You know, but that came out organically. Like, you know, I think being a musician is like being a tube of toothpaste. You know, when you're squeezed, what's in you will come out, you know. So when it was time to play and I was being, like, the pressure was on, I just let whoever came out. I didn't have that intention. And on the song called Trade Winds, you know, which was like, that sounds like George Benson more
Right.
than anything I've ever recorded. It sounds like George Benson, but it was not intended. I wasn't thinking George Benson. I was just playing. So I think it's just a result of having listened and loved their playing so long that it's just part of the DNA of who I am and how I am.
One more record I'll mention, and then I want to ask you about your own take on your recordings. But A Thousand Small Things. And the thing I like about this record, there's a lot of things I like about it, but one thing that's cool is that you've really synthesized all these different influences into one album, and it works. It's a totally cohesive record, and the band is great. And are you playing a steel string acoustic guitar on
I
that?
am. I'm part of it. Yeah.
I don't know too many guys who've done that. I mean, Pat Metheny did that, but not in all these different contexts.
Yeah.
Could you
Kenny
talk
Barrett
about? Did Kenny do that?
on his record, one of the greatest guitar records of all time, called Guitar Forms.
Guitar
Guitar
forms?
Forms, Forms, magnificent.
I'm gonna listen to that record today.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's what you love.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I just think I thought that was a really cool choice. Could you
Not
just
not my most fun record, actually,
really?
because for reasons that had nothing to do with the music or the musicians. I was not happy with the sound in the studio. It was not good. I couldn't really hear myself well. It was not good in that sense, and getting the cover to be what it was just like the logistics of all the things that had to happen with that had nothing to do with the actual music part. Not so much. So I thought the music was like, but here again, the composition, like I think Morning's First Light is one of the tunes on there, and I like that tune a lot, and the thing I played for Barney's Blues or whatever, or the Nexus, like Blues Nexus, or those are things that are all I wanted to capture. I think I even played Round Midnight on that recording, and so I just played the things I love with musicians I love. I mean, Donald Harrison is a master, Carl Allen, Lonnie Plaxico. I think Michael Kanan played piano on that, I believe. And Ron Blake was no Donald Harrison was on that. So Lonnie Plaxico played bass, and yeah, I mean it was a good record. I just don't. When I think about it, I just remember that it was. I didn't like the mix on it so much, and I didn't think that the engineer, he's dead now, so I'm not gonna poo-poo on him, but I didn't think it was a very good job mechanically. The sound of it, I get better in here at home than I got in that studio that day.
I listened to it in my car recently, and it was great in the car. I know what you mean because there are some discrepancies, but I don't know. And it's another example where the music speaks for itself. I wouldn't have guessed that you felt that way about it, so that's cool. But speaking about how you feel, is there any record you've made as a leader or a sideman, or maybe two records, three records that you point to and like these are the Rodney Jones? I'm so proud of these, few records, whatever they are.
I think, yeah, I think the Unspoken Heart. Have you heard that?
I'm not sure if I have.
Yeah, you can find it on Bandcamp on my page. If you go to Bandcamp, Rodney Jones, and then type in, I called it "I Dream of the Sea" for reasons I had to rename it to call it for me to put it out. So I called it "I Dream of the Sea" instead of "Unspoken Heart." Then that's with Kenny Kirkland on it, and Mark Egan, and Mark Sherman is on it, and a drummer named Peter Grant, and that is the most sort of Metheny-ish. That's the blend of that sensibility with the new age and the way I play. It's a synthesis of me skewing Metheny's group versus me skewing George Benson's group.
Hmm.
I think the music, the writing on it is good. I'm proud of the music that's there. I like the music on Undiscovered Few as well. Um, I don't think I mean, I like the music on Soul Manifesto, but there's very little that I feel is representative of how I play. I think I probably played better in every lesson with you than I played on any recording that I've ever put out. Having said that, the best playing I do is what I'm going to do when I play at the end of this broadcast. Because that's me now, and I like the way I play now much better than I like the way I played in all the years before. So just in terms of recordings, um, I guess Unspoken Heart, or I Dream of the Sea as it's called now, and I like the Resonance of Love too. The Resonance of Love, which is kind of a new age music,
I think I
but
have. Yeah.
yeah, but it's that music is real for me. Like that's music that I wrote what I wanted to hear, what I needed to hear. And so that music is dear to me because it reflects what I needed at the time, and it still nurtures me in a way. I don't when I hear it, I don't identify that it's me, and that's how I know it came through me, not from me. When I hear it, it could be anybody, but it does what I need it to do. Devotion is another record I wrote that's very personal. Of course, The Beloved I wrote, which is also really dear too. So yeah, I guess. I mean, I like Soul Manifesto, but am I crazy about my guitar playing on any of them? Not really. If you ask me guitar wise, do I like any of them? Like, would I feel like that was representative of how I play? None of them. What I'm going to do now is how I'm playing on Facebook is representative of what I'm doing now. But yeah, none of them really do that so much.
That's somewhat reassuring. One, because you are playing great on those records, but two, because, and I've mentioned it a bunch of times on this show, but I made a record and I hated how I played on it, so I never put it out in the world. Any thoughts on, should I just stop being a baby and put it out, or should I try and make it?
Yes, yeah. Well, I say yes, but I've got four albums recorded, full albums with like Ron Blake, Carl Allen, Brian Charette, another one with Lonnie Plaxico and Carl Allen, a trio record sitting on my, got all these recordings sitting on my computer right now. But my working theory now with putting stuff out is, if it's a B minus, put it out. It's good enough, because don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And plus, it's not about you. What the B minus to you might be the piece that someone else has been listening for their whole life. So, like you say, oh, I really like it, or it doesn't. It's not for me to say if it's good or not. If it's good to you, it's good. So, that's the most important thing. If the music is serving, even with the playing not being what I wished it would have been, if it's helping, if it's serving, if someone enjoys it and someone gets the benefit of it, then it's selfish for me to withhold that just because I have some vanity ego issue about how good it's supposed to be. I just, and like with the photograph, it is a true representation of what I could do in that moment. That's what I did. That's what it was. It's authentic.
Very cool. So, coming off of that note, we're going to backtrack slightly because I want to know at what point you started teaching at MSM and at Juilliard.
I started teaching at MSM. Gosh, I taught at MSM for I think 32 years, all beginning. So I think how that came about is going to maybe 86, 87, something, 86 maybe, something like that. The person who was in charge of the music program was a guy named Dick Lowenthal at that time, Richard Lowenthal. He was the director of the jazz program. And he called me one day. I was home. He said, "Are you Rodney Jones?" I said, "Yeah." He said, 3 or 4 of the guitar students that are here tell me that they're taking private lessons from you." I said, "Yeah, that's right." And they were also studying with, whoever, Jack Wilkins or whoever. And he said, "Yeah, they're saying like they're learning incredible things. They're like singing your praises." And I said, "Thank you." He said, "Would you like to teach them in Hat School of Music? You're teaching the students anyway. We might as well do it at the school." I said, "All right." So then I began to teach there. Juilliard was a result of giving. I'll tell you what happened. I was asked. Peter Bernstein was the guitar instructor at Juilliard.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was the first one, the initial one. I was the second one. And he had a workshop that he couldn't do. They were doing a workshop in Spain for a week, and he had some gigs he couldn't make it. So I guess they gave him a list of a bunch of people, and they ended up calling me because I knew Carl Allen, who was the drummer on the faculty, and he said, "Oh, Rodney would be great. He's a good teacher and stuff." So back and forth, and I ended up doing it just for 1 week, just not faculty. I'm not joining the faculty, just 1 week of subbing for Peter Bernstein. So I went to Spain, Vitoria, Spain, and I get there. I got there a day late because I had some gig I couldn't get out of. But I said I'll come, but I have to be I can't be show up the day of the gig itself. So I got there and I put my bag in the hotel room and I went to the the room where all the teachers were meeting, and I walk in and there's this furious argument going on, like between these teachers, like literally yelling about it. One teacher's like, "I didn't come here for this. I teach at freaking Juilliard. I didn't come here to teach. These are beginners. I'm not going to teach these students. I didn't come here for this. I came here to work with students who could play." And the other says, "Well, I understand what you're saying," and and then the person running the program is like, "Well, we have to teach everybody," and then they're like, "No, this is Juilliard. This is not kindergarten." And so I literally went like this. I said, "Hi, everyone." And some of the people knew me. They said, "Hey, Rodney." I said, "Hey, how about this?" I said, "I'm not on the faculty or anything. I'm just subbing for Peter. Why don't you give me all the beginners? And that way you guys don't have to deal with that. I'll teach all the beginners all week. I'm just a sub. I'll teach all the beginners, and you guys get to teach the advanced students." And one person was like, "You will do that?" I said, "Sure, no problem." So I did that. I got all the beginners students, all the ensembles, all the beginners. I got it all. Everybody that couldn't play was sent to me. And we had the time of our lives. We learned, we laughed, we learned tunes. It was great. It was like the most fun. The students were lit up. I was lit up. We did an ensemble concert. And anyway, every rehearsal there was this woman that would come and sit and watch the rehearsals. And I knew that there was press coverage of the jazz camp. I figured this was a reporter, whatever have you. And so at the end of the last night, after the end of the faculty concert and the faculty concert and student concert, I'm leaving to go back to the hotel, and this woman that I've seen in all my ensembles says, "Hey, Rodney, I'm getting ready to go back to the hotel. Would you like a ride?" She's got a cab there, and I said, "Oh yeah, thank you." So I got in and I said, "Hi, I'm Rodney Jones. That's so kind of you." I said, "I've seen you in all rehearsals." I said, "You're a reporter?" She said, "No, my name's Lori Carter. I'm the vice president in charge of art, executive director of the jazz program at Juilliard."
Wow.
So, she had seen every rehearsal, literally every one. And she said, "I love what you did with those kids. You treated them with respect. They had fun. You taught them. They loved the program. They gave glowing reviews. It was the best week of their life. They couldn't get over it. And you always were patient with them." And, she said, "We need teachers like that at Juilliard. Would you like to join the faculty?" This is in the cab ride to the hotel. I thought this was a reporter. I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay, well, when we get back, give me a call, and we'll see what we can do." 2 weeks later, I was on the faculty at Juilliard. There were two guitar instructors, myself and Peter Bernstein at the time.
Wow.
I went into so the director called a meeting to go over our syllabus, what we would teach. And I'm very thorough. I had like 7 pages written out of I know what I'm going to here's the things I'm going to teach, and here's how and Peter, the genius that he is, didn't bring anything. And when he walked in the room with nothing, I was like, man, because I know how academic types are. Like that's the language they speak. It's like syllabus.
Yeah.
And so they asked me, and I explained everything, and they asked him. He said, "Well, we just play, and I listen, and I could check out and see what he's doing, and and like 2 weeks later, they fired him." Which is not on the merits of him being a great teacher, because he is. It's not on the merits of him being a great player.
I studied with him. Yeah, I learned from
the
him.
guy is, come on, he's undeniable, a brilliant guy,
Yeah.
But the language of academia, I sort of had a sense of how to talk that language. And so then I became the guitar teacher at Juilliard, and I was there for 12 years. And that was that. That's how I got to do it.
Yeah. Do you think that you knew that you had that skill because you viewed yourself as a teacher first?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And also because I had it figured out. I mean, I in my mind, I know how to teach jazz guitar and jazz. I have it There's no ambiguity. The whole process is in my mind, clear. It works. Everyone I've ever taught it to, it worked. It works. So I'm not ever guessing with how to do it. I know that 5 elements. I'm always teaching 5 elements. I'm teaching melodic and linear freedom, chordal and harmonic freedom, rhythmic freedom, dynamic freedom, as in articulations and how you phrase, and tonal freedom, what the sound you're getting. I'm always teaching those 5 parameters.
You
So
know,
go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's funny you bring those things up because I was just talking to Gareth Fowler about you, and he was saying, and obviously I share this perspective. Man, Rodney, he can just play for an hour, whatever, and he never repeats himself. He has so much content, and that's that harmonic, rhythmic, melodic freedom, right?
Not really. That's what you think. It's not really.
Well, it sounds. I mean, let's put it this way: there's never a pause where it's obvious that you're thinking about what to play.
I'm playing a process. I'm not playing a formula. I'm playing a process. It's different. I'm playing. I'm playing the process of throwing nets into the ocean, not retrieving the net, or not saying, "Here's what I want to pull out. I'm going to look for bluefish in the ocean." I'm I'm playing a process of how I cast the net into the ocean. That's why which I'm emulating from the process that I deduced Coltrane. That in listening and studying him, I heard in his playing a process beyond what he played. I heard how he arrived at what he played, and then I said, "That's what I want to know." And then I put my attention on that, and that's what I'm doing when I engage like that.
Hal Galper once told me that jazz is a process, and you learn the process by doing the process. But he never explained the process. Could you? I mean, maybe you don't want to, but could you describe what the process is in your view that you're playing on those hour-long super solos?
Yeah, an hour long. My longest is an hour and 49 minutes.
I haven't heard that yet.
I'll remember April because I have it. I don't even think it's up there anymore. I have it blocked if it is. The hour 49 minutes of I'll remember April. It's insane, and I only stopped because my wife made me go to Costco.
You got to send me that recording if you have
True
it.
story. She's like, "Honey," I'm like, "Wait, I'm an hour and 40." I'm like, it's like the guy with the slinky. You almost get it. I'm like, "Oh, I almost had it. I was going to do 2 hours." But that's the world's longest consecutive jazz guitar solo. By the way, thank you very much. The process. The secret of it for me, and to me, it has to do with what the nature of creativity is. And for me, the nature of creativity, what I've discovered is that creativity is in large measure taking smaller structures to make something larger. And the ability to perceive small structures in large things gives the ability to reconfigure those structures in infinite ways. It's like playing Tetris. If you have 1,000 pieces, small pieces, you can combine them in infinite ways. If you have 10 really long pieces, you can combine them 10, however many ways you can combine 10 things. But if you have 1,000 pieces, you can recombine them and recombine. It's impossible, literally, to throw puzzle pieces onto the floor and do it the same way twice. It's impossible. When I play, that's exactly what's occurring. That doesn't mean I don't recognize certain pieces. Oh, that looks like an L piece, and I know that's an L piece. But I don't know what the L piece is going to connect to. I don't really know that, and I don't know, I don't know what it's going to be. So I'm playing that process. The process is the end product of a result of playing via contemplative methods versus concentration methods. Concentration meaning, or even meditative. Concentration meaning focusing on your full attention on something and forcing your attention, your mind, to focus on something. That's a great thing to do. There's some people that are adept at that. I can do that. That's a lower form. The higher form is to open the door and to sustain the attention through interest. When I'm interested in what's going on, it's like watching a movie that you like. A 2-hour movie goes by, it seems like 15 minutes. watch a movie you don't like, a half an hour movie seems like 3 hours. Watching something you have to concentrate on that you don't feel, is torturous. The time really slows down. When it's something you're interested in, time really speeds up. And so by maintaining that interest, the relationship, both in terms of speed, things that sound fast to other people really in my mind is 1-to-1, because my interest level is equal with the speed it's coming out. So it's not really fast to me because my mind is engaged in the process. I'm into it. It's only fast if I stop and say, I'm not really. Then the moment I step back, then that thing is, zooming by. But as long as I'm engaged, then it's not zooming by. It's 1-to-1-to-1. If I'm playing fast, I'm not playing fast. It all seems the same tempo to me, notwithstanding technical ability. The ability to process, though, is like that. So it's through the practice of hearing what I want to play, playing and listening while I'm playing, versus talking while I'm playing. When I'm playing, I'm not really talking. When I'm playing that way, I'm not talking. I'm in the audience with you, listening to what's coming out, which means that what's coming out is much freer. It's not limited by what Rodney wants to say. So it can come out. It can just, as I say, what's the note that wants to be played? That's the note that comes out. The note that wants, not the note I want to play. What's the note that wants to be played? That's what I'm always trying to that's why I'm on the mouse hunt. I'm always on the mouse hunt for the note that wants to be played. So, that's sort of a quick overview of that. The process of arriving that has to do with addition by subtraction. I become more able to do that by eliminating the things I don't want to play than by adding more things I do want to play. When I eliminate more of the isms, right. The things that I can play but don't necessarily want to play, but I can play them. When I take those out, what's left is space and something much purer and clearer. Then when I take those purer and clearer things and combine those in the expanded space, you're getting a different sort of flow, and that becomes the beginning of this process of pulling notes out of the air, as Lou Donaldson said. Lou Donaldson said to the great drummer Joe Chambers. Do you know that story? Joe Chambers could really play, and sort of a very loose drummer, and was playing with Lou Donaldson subbing at the Vanguard, and Lou was playing like Alligator Boogaloo, and Joe was like Tony Williams wilding out doing his thing, and so Lou turned around to Joe and said, "Joe, where's the beat?" And Joe said, "Hey Lou, the beat is in the air." And Lou said, "We'll put it on the freaking drums." It's kind of like that.
That's awesome. Rodney, you've touched on a few things, and I want to just say before I ask the follow-up questions that every time I talk to you, you remind me that you know so much more stuff than I think you know. And you're just a wealth of content. And I could take countless more lessons with you and still have questions for you. And actually, one of the things you taught me was how to ask questions, which we're going to talk about in a second. But the fact that you can teach someone how to ask questions is a remarkable thing. I don't know any teachers who've done that for me or for anyone else. And I think that's why some of your students are so great and so successful. If it's David Rosenthal, if it's Miles Okazaki. I mentioned I have 4 or 5 teachers that I hold in the highest esteem. I think one of them was one of your students, and that's Stefan Harris.
Yeah.
So, I mean, could you speak about that for a second? Just how did you amass not only the vocabulary and the musical content, but the educational content, the philosophical content, just the knowledge? It's like a freaking encyclopedia.
Well, thank you. I mean, most of the time I'm teaching world lessons, not word lessons. Word lessons is what you can read in a book, what is correct academically. But world lessons is what you live. I never try to teach anything that's not true for me. If I don't really know it to be true, I don't really want to offer it as truth because I don't really know. So there's an added power when you're speaking your truth. You're speaking your truth. I'm never making stuff up. So if you're never lying, you don't have to worry about getting caught in a lie. I'm always telling my truth. So, if I heard this broadcast back in 5 years, it's still true. Absolutely, it's the same because it's true. I might have expanded awareness of what I said, But the truth is still the truth. It was true for me, and it's real. Um, so, I mean, a lot of it comes from my dad, who was a genius guy with 5 PhDs, but, a common touch. You would never know to talk to him unless you engaged him on anything, and he knew everything about everything. Um, Bruce Johnson was also a brilliant guy, who, you know, we talked about many things beyond guitar. Um, the spiritual teachers I work with, these Eck masters, are also brilliant. They are common touch. They're never. It's not spirituality for the few. It's that everyone is worthy and everyone has a way, and that any teacher that guides you, that opens your heart to love, to divine love, is a worthy teacher. And that's basically if it did that, then you're with the right guy, no matter who it is. So that's that part of it. Being inquisitive, having a childlike curiosity. I'm curious about things. Something I love about Masao Kazaki, when we first met, I was like, Miles, what are you into? He said, well, I consider myself a student of general knowledge. I thought, that you and we're a good match, because I like that general knowledge, like know a lot about a lot of things. Of course, what generally happens is a cycle. There's a cycle that recurs, which as a person has experiences, they have circumstances in their life, and those circumstances lead them to have experiences. Those experiences lead them to gain knowledge. Knowledge that they then apply becomes wisdom, and wisdom that they then apply becomes experiences. Those experiences generated from wisdom then become service to others, and that service to others then transmutes into love, and then love starts again with the experience of serving from love, which goes back to the first thing, which then becomes knowledge of the experience of love, which then becomes wisdom about the experience of love, and on and on and on. So the cycle. So this is Rodney, 1402.0, version of having cycled through that many, many times. But yeah, I just I try to see the relationships of things. Like I said, small structures that create larger things, and to see concentric circles of truth. Just because something is true doesn't mean there's not something else that's also true, and they can both be true. It's true. It's true I could be in New York. It's true that I could be in the United States. Both are true. They're not mutually exclusive. It's true I'm on Earth. It's pointless and silly to argue those. Well, no, but you're in New York. Well, but I'm also on Earth. That's true too. Yeah, but you're in New York. I mean, it's ridiculous, So, it's just kept that sort of thing. And for me, I think the key thing is that I never feel like I'm learning things only for myself. I think the law of economy is I learn things, everything happens for me, nothing happens to me. And everything's happening for me, and also so I can pay it forward to someone else. I don't think anything is just intended for me alone because I'm so amazing that I'm the only one that can know. I think it's all to be paid forward to use it, because that's, at a certain point, that's the only way to grow. You don't need gas in a parked car. Once, if you want more of love, if you want more knowledge, more information, you've got to be willing to use it. You got to do something with it. Then you get more gas. This is why the masters of the music, we're touring all the time and playing all the time. You listen to how they play, Coltrane reflects someone that was practicing all the time and playing all the time. He reflects that. You hear, this is a guy that's doing a lot of work and having a chance to work a lot of stuff out, If you just don't get that chance, that's why I play a long time, because how can I recreate that in a limited environment that we have, from a physical standpoint? Well, I can do that by going in and going deep and playing like I'm playing at the Vanguard, or playing like I'm on tour and playing the long solo and going deep and, playing till I run out of ideas and then going beyond that. So you run out of ideas, then what do you do? What do you do then? And when you ask that question, there's always a question when you ask the question, how do you go beyond what you know? Don't make knowing the thing, make being the thing. Play who you are. Go beyond what you know, play who you are. Well, now you've got another world of stuff to play. All right, you don't know anymore, but you can be who you are. Play that. So maybe you go from playing giant steps to you're playing folk tunes. Okay, what are you putting in the folk tune? Where does it lead? Then you look at the points of connection between the folk tune. What's behind the folk song? Well, who wrote it? What was their intention? What about that relates to you? What does it teach about mastery? Who else is the master? John Coltrane. Now you're back to, okay, let's go to John Coltrane again. And the cycle continues. And what did Coltrane then embody about love? Well, let's listen to Naima. Okay, well, what do Naima and Impressions have in common? Whatever that thing is, let's start there. Let's follow that rabbit hole. What do they have in common? Where does that lead? Well, that might lead to Amazing Grace, or that might lead to Shenandoah, or that might lead to Loch Lomond, or that might lead to This Land Is Your Land. That might lead to Pete Seeger. And what does Pete Seeger embody? Well, something about him maybe could remind you of Monk. A free spirit, a creative. Well, what did Monk and Pete Seeger have in common? And, so I just follow this kind of rabbit hole of but the key is to follow one, because if you chase two rabbits, you know how many you catch? None. You got to chase a rabbit. You got to chase one to whatever end you've chased it to. And then if you want to chase another one, chase another. And most students in general don't go deep enough with anything. They go wide. They go a little deep and then they go wide into the next thing. A little deep and wide into the next thing. And I played the things I play, because Ron Carter talked about that. He said Miles and his group played the same tunes for 10 years. The same repertoire night after night. Which you wouldn't think Miles and Herbie and they were playing the same thing, but they did it because they forced themselves to find deeper things, new things in it. They forced themselves to drill down deep. And there's something really magical about that, rather than, I guess I have Stella together now. Moving on. I still play Stella. I still play Impressions. I still play, I Remember April. I still play these tunes, not because I don't know other tunes, but I'm still mining the richness of them. I'm forcing myself to hit the wall in order to go over the wall, or around the wall, or through the wall, or to see what the wall is made of, or to learn more about what resistance is, or to gain strength, and to, all this kind of things. It's like you drive a car. When you come to a stop sign, what do?
Stop.
And then what do you do?
Go.
Right.
Look
You
around.
come to a stop sign. You stop. You look both ways. You assess you assess what's going on. You redetermine where you're going and how to get there, and you take the next step. But so many young musicians practice stuff, and they hit a stop sign and they go home. Say, well, I guess that's as far as I'm going to go. And that's it. Yep, I've worked on my technique, so I'm good now. And I haven't really worked on the technique. You can't choose to not play fast unless you can play fast. I can't choose to not play professional basketball because I can't play professional basketball. It's not a real choice. How can I choose to not play professional basketball? I can't play professional basketball. So it's okay to play however a person wants to play, but as a teacher, as the big picture thing, one has to be conversant in even what they don't want to do before they can dismiss what they don't want to do, because it offers lessons. The things that show you what you don't want to do are as important as the things that show you what to do. The things you say no to are more important than the things you say yes to. But you've got to be willing to pursue it, to try. And then you learn through the trying. And then after if you try to play fast for a year and you can't do it, okay. But you've learned a shitload of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, well, no, that's not my, Jim Hall's my guy, and I'm just going to play like that. Okay, I love Jim Hall too, but dude, you don't know what else is possible. If Jim Hall could have played like George Benson, he would have. Period. He would have. Can you imagine that sensibility with that technique?
Right.
It's like that. But it's not, for most people, they rule things out. And remember, the moment you say I'm ruling it out, you're doing that from the state of consciousness, the state of awareness of where you are in that moment. So you're forever fixed. Rodney at 18 says, I'm not going to do that thing. And here I am, 29, and I'm still not doing that thing, and I'm a completely different person. That thing might really have helped me at 29, but I ruled it out at 18 with a limited amount of information.
Right.
So it's important to rule things out, but it requires a degree of maturity to know where you are when you rule those things out. To say, you know what, I'm comfortable now with having a lot of experience and saying, this road is not for me. And that's a mature, informed decision. But many students make that choice with a very limited amount of information and from a place of reactive, not proactive. They make it as a reaction to something they don't want versus acting upon something they do want as a matter of learning. And so I think proactive and being cause, not effect, is always a higher form. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I hope that's helpful.
It is. You made the distinction between going deep and going wide.
Right.
And I mentioned to you that you taught me how to ask questions. I feel like going deep is the same as asking questions.
And what's the best question you should ever ask anyone that knows more than you?
I was going to ask you
I
that
told you
very
a million
question
times.
at the end of this interview. You're
Okay.
jumping the gun on me there,
All
but
right. Cool. We know what it is, right?
I sure do. Yeah,
Okay,
and
good.
viewers can
They can
expect that
guess.
question very soon. But I hope educators will take what you're saying to heart. I mean, one of
They
the reasons
won't.
I think some of them will, particularly the guitar players, because of who you are. I know that you've got more perspective on the matter than I do.
When I say they won't, I don't mean they won't. I just mean that we're in a time of a lot of tribalism, and people wall off into their own areas for reasons that they wall off into their own areas.
Right,
Um,
right.
I'm always playing to the one. The story I use to illustrate my teaching formula and everything I do is this. Maybe I've told you the story. There's an old man and on the beach. Did I ever tell you that story? The old man on the beach, and there's 1,000 starfish.
Mhm.
10,000 starfish. The tide is going out, and all these starfish are on the beach, drying up in the sun, dying. And this old man is out there, and he picks up a starfish and he throws it into the water. He's doing this, and this young kid comes by and says, "Dude, old man, there's 10,000 starfish out here." And he says, "Yeah, I know." And he picks up one and throws it in. It doesn't matter, man. There's 10,000 starfish. The sun is coming out. They're going to die. And the old man picked up the starfish and says, "Well, it matters to this starfish." He throws it in the water.
Nice.
I'm always thinking about the starfish. Like, the bulk of people are never going to get, whatever most people are doing, don't do that as a general rule of thought. Most people are not going to get most things most of the time. So I'm always playing to the one or two people that will. So when I say they won't, I don't mean nobody will. I just mean en masse, they won't. And they don't. But that's not to say there's not someone that won't get it. I think they will. Someone will. That's the person I'm talking to. You. I'm talking to you.
I love it, Rodney. Well, before I ask you that question that you've alluded to, I do want to do one more sort of geeky thing, but I hope you'll indulge me with this. I have a list of about 10 individuals on this paper, and I wonder if you could just offer a brief anecdote for each. We
Okay?
might not get to all of them. The first one is George Benson.
Grandmaster of the jazz guitar, um, a once in a generation talent.
Uh, any chance encounters with him? I know you've met him.
Yeah, I know George. Uh, think. Well, George is responsible for me being me. I heard George in, I think, 1974. I think I was 18 or 73, at a place called the Bottom Line in New York. Used to be a club. And he was at the height of his powers. He was playing the best of his life. He was, 30 maybe or something, 32. And he was just, and I heard him, and it was like, I'd never heard anything like that ever. It was the most devastating, amazing, like, it was like hearing Coltrane at his peak play impressions, and you're a saxophone player. I just heard George Benson. I was like, I literally left the club feeling like, you know what? I should just give up music now. I should not play the guitar anymore because I'll never be able to play that good. I'll never have that kind of chops. I'll never be able to play like that. It's not going to happen. I couldn't see any possible way that I could go from where I am to what that was in terms of excellence, skill. It was impossible. And so I was like, you know what? I should just stop. Like, do something else. And I'm walking to the subway on Bleecker Street, towards Bleecker Street, or West Fourth, or wherever it was. And as I'm standing, getting ready to go down, I had this light bulb moment going on. I'm like, wait a minute. What's the one thing I could do that George Benson? What's the one thing I can do that George Benson can never do? could be myself. George Benson can't be me.
Right.
He can't play to the people I'm going to play for. He's not going to meet the people I'm going to meet. He's not going to teach the students I'm going to teach. He's not going to do the gigs I'm going to do. He doesn't know my life experience. He doesn't know my dad and my mom. He doesn't know Bruce Johnson. He can never be me. Just like I can't be him. But the moment I thought he can't be me, the playing field was leveled. And I was like, you know what? What I should do is just be me to those people that I can play for. People that I can do what I do for those people, and that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't have to be him. And that's when I really felt empowered to, like, you know what? Stand in your own shoes, dude. Learn from everybody, but have confidence that my story mattered. That what I would do was going to make a difference. And that has been the case. So he's responsible for that in a big picture. He calls me every now and then, and every time I hear his voice on the phone, it's like surreal that like George Benson just called me. He said some very nice things about me in the press and publicly, and continues to do so. And it's a mutual love fest. I mean, he's the greatest guitarist in person that I've ever seen play the guitar, bar none. I have seen him play the guitar like Art Tatum level in front of me. It literally, as me, like as this guy, I've seen that, and it was like magic. It's like watching a magician do magic. It's just, there's no way to explain that other than, you know, God-given gift that he has nurtured and you know, been worthy of it, been a worthy steward of it, because he can sure play that guitar in ways that no one I've ever seen can. I've seen them all up close, all of them. No one is even close. That's the truth, including myself.
Okay, next person, Kenny Kirkland.
A true natural genius, funny guy, had the unique ability to make everyone he played with sound better. As great as a soloist he was a greater accompanist. Everyone he played with, when I would play with him, he made me sound like I was the best guitar player in the world. He had that ability to just make it so comfortable and feel so right. I mean, I introduced him to jazz. He was a classical student at Manhattan School of Music, and I used to cajole him about playing jazz, and finally it got through. And
it sure did.
I guess a natural genius, I would say. Tragic figure, personally, but a natural genius. Beautiful, beautiful soul, beautiful spirit.
Kenny Burrell.
Grandmaster Red Belt. He's one of the trunks of the tree. He's the trunk of the tree. George Benson is a real big branch off of that trunk. I'm a big branch off of that branch. You're a branch off of that branch. It's like that. There's some leaves, but Kenny Burrell's a real true artist, and he embodies the blues, the bridge between the blues and the bebop vocabulary on the instrument. He's immersed and infused with the blues sensibility in everything that he plays, and just a real gentleman. He shows you don't have to be any kind of weird person to be. You can have dignity and hold your head up and be well dressed and articulate and play your behind off. And he was very kind to me. He was, playing with him was some of the greatest lessons, and for many reasons. And he's been an important figure in my career since the beginning.
He's the reason I became a jazz guitarist.
Understandable.
Yeah. So, Dizzy Gillespie.
The architect of the linear aspect of bebop, along with Charlie Parker. Thelonious Monk being the architect of the harmony, and Max Roach, to some extent, being the architect of the rhythmic aspect of Max Roach and Kenny Clark. Dizzy gave me everything. Once someone like that puts their stamp on you and says, "You're good enough to play with me," it's all downhill from there, because what's someone going to say? He can't play? So you know more than Dizzy, is what you're saying? I don't think so.
Herbie Hancock.
One of the perhaps the greatest living exponents of the post Bob era to now. You know, someone who truly plays the process I'm talking about. I would say one of the most creative, if not the most creative, uh, artists currently playing to this day. Even at his age, he's or maybe more so at his age, he just brings a wealth of experience and freshness. Every time I've heard him live, and I've heard him several times live, it was always different and it was always amazing. It never sounded canned. It always sounded like he was in the moment. And it was always genius in the moment. So, you know, I think Keith Jarrett's like that too.
Kenny Garrett.
I mean, in my dreams, I can play like him. His linear thing, he likes the same sense, the kind of minor modal tonality that I resonate with. He likes that a lot too, and he plays the living crap. So, I did one record date where we were on it together with our organ player named Reuben Wilson, and man, Kenny Garrett soloed first, and that was a big mistake. It was a big. I didn't want to play at all, man. You know, I mean, I did good. I represented for the guitar players, like guitar players in fourths and fifths, yay, you know. But compared to like what he was playing, I just, you know, I was outgunned. I brought a knife to a gunfight. You know, that's what happened. Yeah, but I love Kenny Garrett. I mean, I love the way he plays. I love his the feeling. I love, you know, he's one of my very favorite musicians to listen to. I enjoy listening to him.
You've mentioned that record date before, and I still have not heard it. I'm dying to hear.
I think it's online. I think if you Google Reuben Wilson, Kenny Garrett, or Reuben Wilson, Rodney Jones, Kenny Garrett, I think something will come up about that.
Awesome. Okay, two more.
Okay.
Uh, James Brown.
Well, who invented soul, God or James Brown? I don't know. If I had to choose, I'd probably have to say James Brown did at this point. I mean, come on. The epitome of authenticity and originality and showmanship and ballsiness and, you know, just, you know, if you can't feel his music, you're not alive, basically. So, yeah, he's no James Brown, no me. And that's with an N-O and a K-N-O. No James Brown, no me. No James Brown, no me. Both ways.
Okay, last one. Rosie O'Donnell.
Genius comedian. I love her. Genius comedian. Her sense of humor and mine align a lot. About a lot. I enjoyed playing on her show for 6 years because I really enjoy her sense of humor. I didn't know her personally that well. I mean, we knew each other's names and we're friendly and would say hello and that kind of stuff. She would send me a birthday card and that kind of stuff. Um, but I just really admire her professionalism. She was a consummate professional on her show, and her sense of humor was like, you know, she was a real comedic genius. Like fresh, spot on, super quick, you know, sarcastic humor, shock humor, prank humor. She had it all. I loved it all. Those were softball questions. I thought you were going to ask me hard questions. Those are easy.
What's an example of a hard question?
Hard question would be like, what do you think of Miles Okazaki? Or people that are alive that are my friends. You
I
know?
can't pit you against your own
Well,
student.
there's no against. It's just, you know, asking a question is not against, you know. Or you could say, like, what do you think of, you know, Jonathan Kreisberg? You know, people that are my contemporaries.
Yeah.
Those are more nuanced answers because I want to be truthful and yet at the same time I don't want to in any way be harsh. So.
Well, let me offer one of my own anecdotes here. You mentioned at Juilliard being willing to take on the beginners, and I have a similar experience involving Vic Juris that reminded me of you, and you reminded me of this when you were talking about the Juilliard thing. When I was at New School, I took a lesson from a famous guy There's no need to to name him. I got to the lesson. He said, "What do you want to play?" I said, "All the things you are." And he was less than kind in my saying that. And his point was valid, which was you have to learn different kinds of repertoire. It can't all just be this song, this same three songs, at every session. But I found his prickliness just very memorable. Let's put it that way.
Right.
I go to a lesson with Vic Juris, and I've got that experience on my mind, and I kind of, what's the word? I predicate, I guess, calling all the things you are by saying, I know this is overplayed and whatever, but I really like it, so let's play all the things you are. And Vic says, "What are you talking about? Don't offer that preface to that. I've been playing this song for 40 years. I still love playing it." And you mentioned something about tunes earlier too, and obviously that's true. You play softly as in a morning sunrise, like nobody's business.
I love it.
And that kind of humility really is what it is. It speaks volumes about your character. It's and about your teaching too. I learned.
And I love Vic, by the way. Vic and I were good friends, and spoke often, and loved each other's playing, and have played together too. And I had nothing but him. The thing I like about Vic is he was also a full-on teacher too.
Yeah.
He was
Oh, yeah.
not, he was not faking that. He loved his students and loved giving, and so we had that in common. And we talked about that. He was a real friend and someone I really admired and continue to admire and respect and love.
Yeah, rest in peace. He was
He is.
really really something else. But okay, I guess since you're pushing me for it, a hardball question.
I'm not pushing. Don't offload that to me. I'm not pushing you to anything. I'm just merely saying that you didn't ask the hardball question. I'm not pushing you to ask it. You don't have to, but you can. But I'm not pushing you to.
Well, surely there's a motivation for pointing it out.
Well, thank you. My name's not Shirley.
All right, let's put it this way. You've mentioned that there is a question you taught me to always ask someone who is more knowledgeable than myself. And I'm going to ask you that very question right now. Rodney Jones, what would you like to impart to me today? What would you like to show me or talk about for the remainder of our time?
I would say to you, Sean, that I'm so pleased and proud and happy for the person you are, for the journey you've taken, that you have shown yourself to be a worthy steward of the love and information and wisdom that I did my best to instill with you. And that this way of sharing this way, I think, is important for people that will hear it, that are not going to ever meet me, but they'll meet me through you, and they'll meet you in this way. And so it just makes me really proud. I mean, it makes me really happy. If you weren't who I thought you were, I would have said no and wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have done it. I don't do what I don't want to do. I'm good at saying no to what I don't want to do. But I did this because of you, because of the man that you are, and because of your beliefs, the depth of your character, the things that you hold as important are in alignment with the things I hold important. They don't have to be the same things, but they cover the same ground. They don't have to cover it the same way. But I respect that in you and about you. And I think you have a bright future. And I just consider it a real blessing and a privilege and an honor to have been able to play a part in that future for whatever it is you're going to do in the years ahead, for the lives you will touch. And through the things you share, they will meet me, and they will meet Bruce Johnson, and they will meet Wes and Grant Green and Barney Kessel and Kenny Burrell, and that's as it should be. That's the way it goes. And so I feel that a lot of what I shared with you is in really good hands, and you're well equipped to take that into the next part of the evolution of the jazz guitar. So I feel really good about it. I'd like to just tell you thank you, and I think you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, from what I can tell. So seems right to me.
Well, thank you so much, Rodney, for saying that. I'm humbled by that, and as I said at the beginning, I'm honored that you could be here because I know you wouldn't do this most of the time and for most people. So I really do appreciate your time. And speaking of time, viewers, look at the timestamp right now. Look at how much time this man has given us today. That's who he is. That's the man he is. That's the teacher he is, for real. And I can't thank you enough for it, Rodney. I love you so much.
Send you my PayPal.
Yes, yes, please do that. That's that's only fitting. To close us out, Rodney, could you please take us away with
You want me to play something?
guitar?
Oh boy. Do I have to, Dad? Okay. Jeez. Have to play something. All right. Well, let me put my old man booty pad on here because
There you go.
I believe it's a lot more comfortable. Tuning is for squares, so I'm not going to tune up. Let's see. I'm going to switch microphones now because I'm using on this microphone that I use for teaching. I mean, for talking, which is a good microphone. But for playing, I've switched to another one, which doesn't sound good for talking, but it's going to sound a lot better for playing. And then I'll switch back when we say our goodbye. So you still hear me talking, but now I'm on the other microphone now.
Yep.
All right, cool. For copyright purposes, I'm not going to play any heads.
Fair enough.
Well, I mean, YouTube
Yeah,
flags, things like that, and for
Of course.
you don't want to get have it. Get a
I
copyright.
appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Let's see how this balance is. Yeah,
Maestro, thank you
that's the
so
best I
much.
could do today.
It's a pretty high bar, man.
Well,
Thank you
every
so
day is
much
different.
for everything. Really,
Every
thank
day
you for
is different.
being here. Thank you for your wisdom, your leadership by example. Thank you for your music. Just thank you for everything. You've been so generous to me and to so many people. And I forgot to mention, but if anyone wants to learn from Rodney personally, can you tell them briefly about Jazz Guitar Scholars?
Yeah, Jazz Guitar Scholars. That's a bunch of. It's basically all the stuff I've talked about uh, in an area, in a way that's learnable. I've got a bunch of different courses. Two that are called Tune World, which involve going through tunes, learning how to figure it out. How to put them together, how to expand your awareness of tunes. And Line World is how to do what I just did. And I've got how to advance blues courses and how to play funk guitar and all this kind of stuff. So a bunch of stuff. The main thing anyone is interested in can just email me at jazzguitarscholars@gmail.com. That's jazzguitarscholars@gmail.com. And I'll do my best to help where I can while I can.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Maestro. This has been awesome.
My honor. Let me know when you put it up so I can check it out.
It'll be at the time of this recording. It'll be a week from tomorrow.
Okay. Well, send me a reminder, please.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
You know how old
Absolutely.
people are. They don't. I don't even know I have for breakfast today. I can't. I can remember guitar, but that's about it.
I
So
will definitely send this to you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
All
Rodney.
my love and thank you for everyone that watched. Appreciate you.
Thank you guys. And if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do the thing.
Subscribe. Do the right thing. You know what to do.
Alrighty. Take care,
All right.
guys.
You too.